This is a Queen Bee Radio High School sports presentation.
Welcome to another edition of the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup, presented by Vertical Rays Milwaukee. It's a very busy high school sports postseason. This fall, we just finished the regional round for high school volleyball, level 1 football playoffs wrapping up, and we got sectionals for volleyball coming up this week, as well as the level 2 playoffs. We'll tell you all about it on our Queen Bee Radio family of stations coming up in a little bit, but we're going to start off with Division 3 sectional volleyball. RJ Osterhaus and Mark Evenstad kind enough to join me and talk about the action that we saw in Division 3 in the regional round, as we have two local teams competing for a spot to advance to the sectional final on Saturday. It will be Mineral Point against Cuba City. We'll have that matchup Thursday night. Shark, we'll start off with the top half of the bracket where the Pointers were the number 1 seed. You got to see them against Lancaster and Darlington. Took care of Lancaster pretty easily, but Darlington really put them to the test in the regional final on Saturday night. Talk about the path for the Pointers from your vantage point and what things stood out to you about this Mineral Point team.
Well, they're a young team and fortified by some of that youth. Some of the participants for Mineral Point that really impressed me was Maddie Cabot and several others that just led the way. Cabot, just great acceleration. I mean, just the ability to jump and block opposing kill attempts and just get up and down the floor. So Coach Cabot has a really, really good team this year, and it's probably going to stay that way for some years to come.
Yeah, the Pointers getting the number 1 seed and the SWAL conference champions, as they had an undefeated conference record. They handed Cuba City their only loss in the SWAL. And RJ, you got to see the Cubans the last 2 rounds, took care of Fenimore and took care of Broadhead. And Coach Carrie Lawson getting her 700th win as a coach at Cuba City. What's the outlook for the Cuba City Cubans through the regional round?
Hey, regional round went very well. They coasted. If you have any concerns with Cuba City, I think maybe it is that you weren't really truly challenged. It was kind of cruise control outside of a few spots for Fenimore. Broadhead really only had one stretch, a very short stretch where they appeared to be, asserting their will against Cuba City. But Cuba City, you've got such good balance. You've got some depth. They're well coached. They're well coached. With the video stuff that we've been able to do, getting to the gym a lot earlier to set up, and you get to catch it. You see it with some of these teams in the postseason, some of their pregame rituals and things like that. And I kind of respected what was going on, not to stare at what was going on, but you hear behind the curtain, just you could tell they're having fun with some of their pregame routines. Carrie Lawson says they're a very loose group, they're a very fun group, and they're enjoying what they're doing out there, and they get a shot. I mean, we talk about child psychology. You get to play the team that got the better of you in a huge rival, which is always Cuba City and Mineral Point. They lost 3-1 the first time back on, I believe it was October 3rd. And some of the match scores were kind of lopsided. So I think anything can and probably will happen coming up on Thursday night. And the one thing that's guaranteed is it's almost always guaranteed a classic with these two teams this deep in the postseason.
And one of the interesting things about the matchup between Cuba City and Mineral Point this go around is that, traditionally what we've seen in volleyball is that, if you meet in the postseason, this would be the 3rd time that you've seen them. So this would be a bit of a rubber match, but they only met each other once during the regular season, and that was just due to both teams playing in a number of different tournaments throughout the season. So they decided to ease back on their conference matches a bit. So the fact that it's a rematch and this is in Mineral Point, for the opportunity to get to the game to get to state, there's a lot at stake, and really, I think it's just really fascinating that it's these two teams again, just having to go head to head. And, more recently, it seems like Mineral Point has had Cuba City's number, but yeah, I think all bets are off when it's, your season that's on the line. Shark, what do you make of Mineral Point's environment, having been in the gym, and what do you think Cuba City is going to be in for in this rematch?
Well, Mineral Point has certainly been tested this season, as of course evidenced by the win over Darlington. But and that's been the case now the last couple of years. So Mineral Point has experienced this, especially with this group. And I mentioned Maddie Cabot, but some of the others that really impressed me: Lacey Lindsay, Bree Ganinen, Ella Kroll, Malia Ashelman, just great performers for Mineral Point. So the fact that they're running into this again just kind of tells me that yeah, these are the two best teams in the SWAL. So it's just rightfully so that they compete somewhere along the line late in the tournament trail. You know, if this is one of those deals where you're meeting in the very first round, in a regional quarterfinal, it just kind of takes the air out of it a little bit. But seeing that's going to be in a sectional, and for Mineral Point to have it at home, you know, that makes things very real. And then for Cuba City, well, you know, same thing. It used to be that they would run into Wisconsin Heights each and every year when you get to this level. And that, I don't know. I don't statistically know the balances on that, who's got the upper hand. But I did see one time, this is several years ago, Cuba City dropped the first two matches on the road at Wisconsin Heights in a sectional, and they came back and won the next three to win it. So that's pretty heady stuff.
You've got to love for the Pointers that they have won that first meeting, 3-1. That's some confidence. And I think for them, you love that they were really challenged in that regional final too. And you mentioned to me off the air, Shark, that was such a tough battle that they're kind of lucky it's such a nice break in between that regional final and the sectional semifinal, because Darlington gave Mineral Point all they could handle.
Boy, they sure did. And be quite honest with you, RJ, the first set, Mineral Point just smacked Darlington around. It was 25-9. And I thought to myself, oh boy, here we go. This is going to be over in an hour. It's going to be a 3-set sweep, and it'll just show the superiority of Mineral Point. But then the next set, when Darlington took them out to 25-20, I said, okay, all right. You know, Iowa Grant beat Mineral Point the other night as well, too, in the second set, and Point recovered. Well, hold the phone. Darlington beat them again in the third set, 25-20. I'm thinking, is this a big upset night? Could this really happen? If it did, or if it would happen, my gosh, that would probably be the biggest win in the history of Darlington volleyball. But hey, you got to play 4 sets, you got to play 5 sets, and Point won that four set and forced the 5th set and won that one 15-8. Just shows you just how resilient Mineral Point is.
It ended up being a battle for the conference championship the first time, and the way it went at Cuba City, oh, by the way, Mineral Point took set 1, 26-24. Then Cuba City bounced back 25-10. Mineral Point 25-20, and then winning set 4, 25-16. So it's the adjustment clearly Cuba City's to make. You get a new venue. It's odd, you know, depending on how your conference shakes up, and maybe flip a coin in the SWAL, where maybe it's a lot better to see those teams a couple of times if they're going to make you better. To me, if I'm into the postseason, I'd rather have a 500 record and just had to battle for every win. Just the best comparison I probably make is that SWAL boys conference for basketball.
Right.
But from a volleyball standpoint, go ahead, Shark.
I want to bring this up, guys. Unlike maybe some other sports, it's pretty hard to make an adjustment in just 60 seconds. You know, other sports, you have a halftime, and in other sports, maybe you have, when there is a timeout, it's a longer timeout. Is it really tough in volleyball to make an adjustment in just 60 seconds to turn things around?
Well, it's a game of runs, and you see it a lot of time. I don't know if I've seen it play so much anymore about the rotation. When you've got a certain player in the front row and that player suddenly is stuck in the back row for part of a rotation, they can't have the same effect as they had when they were in that front line. I think you see more of that in volleyball as some of, all right, how's this run going to end? Is it going to end anytime soon? If you can get a great server and somehow you steal and make a very short run out of it, you've got an advantage there, and you might have dodged that bullet for a good portion of the rest of the match.
And I saw this in a Wisconsin State Journal article. It was about liberos, and it was from the perspective of the Wisconsin Badgers. But the libero is very key. And if the libero is struggling, you know, it shows a little bit of a dour emotion for whatever it is, being out of position or not being able to bump the ball in the right direction, that kind of stuff. Opponents can sense that, And the player you want to attack is the libero. You want to push that ball to the libero and try to frustrate her as much as you possibly can.
Well, that depends on the quality of your libero, actually. And I've been able to, the further you get in the playoffs, I've seen over the years players on the court clearly targeted by the server. When you have the servers who are that good, they're going to put the ball where they want. And you may go after it. You might attack the right libero, but you may also avoid the right libero and try to get the hands in somebody a little bit less talented. And the libero, I think, is always the broadcaster's favorite player because that's the easy one to pull out of the crowd and identify. Different colored jerseys. Gotta love that. That's the trade-off you make for having 2 jersey numbers in a roster when you try to learn what's going on, having not seen a team before. The glass is always half full. What's it full of, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think what's very interesting heading into this matchup, and you kind of alluded to this, RJ, is that Mineral Point has stuff to work on, right? You know, Darlington gave Mineral Point all that they had, and there's certainly things that Coach Cabot's going to be working with those pointers heading into this sectional semifinal. But for Cuba City, they've been very efficient as far as the last 2 matchups. They were pretty methodical. It wasn't. Listening back to the game that you had, the other night in the regional final, it was, pretty much from start to finish. There was no true quote unquote tri-court turning point of the match. It was Cuba City showed up, they dominated, they controlled the match and kind of went from there. So it's one of those things where, yes, one team has some stuff to work on to fine tune, whereas, the other team for Cuba City, it's stick with what's gotten you here, stick with what works, and what are some of the things that the Cubans have to do to prepare themselves for Mineral Point? Is it just a momentum thing, or are there, X's and O's types things that maybe Kerry Lawson is going to be working with them on?
I think the biggest key for them is how they're going to handle adversity when they get to that point. They haven't seen it so far this postseason. You mentioned you feel like a lazy broadcaster when you don't give a tri-court turning point. I'm not going to disrespect anybody enough to say when the other team got off the bus. And Cuba City was not dominant enough to make that when they got off the bus suggestion. It was just a matter of them being so consistent throughout against their opponents that it wasn't a steamroll them. It was just gradually play better volleyball throughout. And that's what got them as steady as it goes. How they handle adversity when they get it, and they will get it from Mineral Point, how they bounce back, how they handle that. It's balancing that even keel mindset with a sense of urgency, which you always have in the postseason.
I've agreed. Looking forward to seeing how that one shakes out. Again, it will be Cuba City at Mineral Point on Thursday night. RJ will have to call that one over on Super Hits 106. Raleigh Cheese pre-match at 6:40, first serve set for 7 o'clock. Thanks, RJ and Shark, for joining me for the Division 3 layout. We'll talk about Division 4 with Steve Prestegard coming up a little bit later on in the high school sports roundup. But coming up next, we will have our Level 1 football recap and Level 2 playoff preview. High school football, a lot of fun action in Level 1 that we got to talk about and dissect what's going to happen in Level 2. The High School Sports Roundup continues after this on YouTube and SoundCloud.
Vertical Raise is the premier online donation platform, utilizing email, text messaging, and social media campaigns to exponentially increase the reach of your fundraiser. With detailed tracking and the complete personalization of every page, Vertical Raise provides an easy system that works. Our experienced representatives have made us the most effective fundraising platform available. We look forward to the opportunity in helping elevate your program to the next level and reaching your goals. Visit online or call today.
The Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup presented by Vertical Raise Milwaukee. It's now time for us to talk about high school football. Level 1 playoffs are done. We have Level 2 playoffs coming up this coming week on Queen Bee Radio. And I'm joined by our football broadcasters, Tom Nices, Wally Troughton, Mark Evenstad, and the Platteville Truther, Steve Prestegard. And Steve, let's start off with Division 4, talking about the Platteville Hillmen. They got past Jefferson in their Level 1 playoff, 35-21, the final in that one. They will now take on Lakeside Lutheran in Level 2. First home playoff game for the Hillmen in their brand new stadium. And just kind of talking a little briefly about how that game kind of transpired on Friday night. You had mentioned that, maybe for the Hillmen, this was kind of maybe a reality check of sorts because, playoff football is a little bit different than regular season football. And seems like they were put to the test against Jefferson for a little bit on Friday night.
Yeah, well, sometimes that happens when a team gets a relatively big early lead because Platteville scored on their first series and then got a touchdown long after that. So they were 14-0, and then they got a touchdown early in the second quarter. So now they're up 21-0. And, you might think, well, we got this. Well, it wasn't quite the case because Jefferson, was quite generous with the football, shall we say. Among other things, they gave up a touchdown because a long pass ended up with a ball bouncing into and out of the end zone for a touchback. It could have been a whole lot more interesting even than it was. So Platteville had to kind of reset a little bit when it got to 28-21, but the defense stepped up, and Platteville, they got another offensive touchdown. I think Platteville got 2 turnovers in the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken, and that finally put away Jefferson. I have to believe that Jefferson was probably one of your better number 8 seeds because, Platteville the last 2 years was the number 8 seed, barely got into the playoffs. Jefferson looked better than that, comparatively speaking, and, didn't quit, to their credit, when they were down 21-0. But then again, Platteville also did respond to some of the adversity they had. So they were able to, get their first playoff win actually in 6 years.
The one thing that I was impressed with Platteville in that case was the resiliency of how they came back. It's kind of like we got a big lead, we got this, because that's where they had been the previous 3 weeks. Well, and as Steve said, things don't always continue like that. And when all of a sudden Jefferson turned it on a little bit, then that flipped the switch again. And Platteville team came forward and did what they needed to do as the game wore on to finish it. There were some things where Jefferson matched up well with Platteville, mainly because, you get the huge linemen, and they've created problems for Platteville as the year has gone on. I mean, Lancaster game being an example. And there you took a look where they had a huge guy, and then they would go heavy on balance line, and then they would run behind that with a pretty good running back. And finally, Platteville was able to negate some of that kind of a thing that they were doing and responded very, very well.
And the Hillmen getting the 35-21 win over Jefferson. They host Lakeside Lutheran, who, as a 5 seed, took down the number 4 seeded Evansville 21-14. The other scores in the upper right quadrant of that bracket. The 6 seed Lake Mills taking down Racine St. Catherine's 13-12, and then Catholic Memorial, the 2 seed, taking care of Martin Luther 49-0. I don't think that the Catholic Memorial score is necessarily a surprise, but looking at how things are shaping up in this bracket, Lakeside Lutheran, I would imagine is going to pose a pretty legitimate, threat to Platteville, but looking down the line, seems like Catholic Memorial is going to be that team that's going to be a collision course and probably that major hurdle that Platteville would have to clear in level 3.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, Lakeside Lutheran has been pretty good over the last few years, and they've been one of the better teams in the division. Catholic Central on the other, Catholic Memorial on the other hand, almost everyone, as soon as they saw they were going to be Division 4 again, already predicted them to be the state champion. I being one of them, pretty much. I just don't see how, with the recruiting they do within the metro area and the players that they bring in through their recruiting, the average Division 4 school in Wisconsin can't compete against that. And even the better ones struggle to compete against that. That's what makes that difficult. And supposedly there's going to be all these wonderful changes. I don't think that'll change anything.
Yep. So it will be Platteville taking on Lakeside Lutheran. We'll have that game on Friday night on Extreme 107.1. We'll just quickly touch on Division 5 as Prairie du Chien advanced as the 2 seed. They took down number 7 seed Clinton 42-20. That sets up the matchup against Columbus, who took down Broadhead Judah 49-0, a shutout win. And Columbus's Colton Brunel, now the state's all-time leading rusher, getting the record in the win against Broadhead Judah. Also, a side note, Broadhead Judah coach Jim Matthias announcing that he is resigning as head coach of Broadhead Judah. He will not be the coach going forward. He's going to be focusing on his principal responsibilities with the school. So he's not going to be the head coach anymore there. The upper half of that bracket, La Crosse Aquinas 42-6 over New Glarus Monticello, and Watertown Luther Prep got by Westby 21-18. So a big matchup in Division 5. And I kind of mentioned this in a few of the previous episodes of the show, where Columbus going to Prairie du Chien falls under that category of what feels like a crime but doesn't, just because it's Columbus, the Division 4 state champion last year. They get a 3 seed in this division, and they have to go to Prairie du Chien, who was the 3rd place finisher in the SWC, but is somehow a 2 seed, and also Prairie du Chien beat Aquinas, who's the number 1 seed in this bracket. Just a really weird layout as far as this bracket goes. But Columbus coming to Prairie du Chien, and I think from what I can tell and from what we've seen over the past couple of years from Columbus, I think Columbus has a pretty strong argument that they can take care of business against Prairie du Chien. Steve, I know you and I got to call a game at Columbus. It was either last year or the year before, and we got to see Colton Brunell in person, and he was a very special running back then, and obviously the state's all-time leading rusher, coming away with a dominant win over Broadhead Judah in a big matchup against Prairie du Chien.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is that Prairie du Chien had 2 conference losses, and Columbus only had 1, but gets a higher seed. Now, I assume that has something to do with strength of schedule. And in the case of, Columbus had a strong strength of schedule just because of playing in the Capital Conference. But Prairie du Chien's was insane because they played Darlington and they played La Crosse Aquinas, and those 2 teams are still in the playoffs. So once again,
and number 1 seed.
Once again, the mystery of how the seeding formula works strikes again. I think Prairie du Chien, if they can run the ball, basically, if they can do the kind of strategy that they wanted to do but couldn't against Platteville, they have a shot in that game, because they can use their offense basically to keep the ball away from Columbus, which has great offense when you have a running back like Brunell. But I think that's probably going to put the ball up in the air very much. And if you like running football, that's the game to watch.
Yep, agreed. So Columbus will take on Prairie du Chien. Columbus, the 3 seed, taking on the 2 seed Prairie du Chien, and then the upper half of that bracket, La Crosse Aquinas, the 1 seed, hosting the 5 seed Watertown Luther Prep. Those are the matchups in level 2 in Division 5. Let's go to Division 6, and boy, is this shaping out to be a very fun bracket for our local teams. Darlington, the 1 seed, took care of Belleville easily, 49-14. Mineral Point goes on the road to defeat Racine Lutheran 30-13. And then in the bottom half of that bracket, the Lancaster Flying Arrows get by Cambridge 16-8. And then Kenosha St. Joseph Catholic took down Cuba City 42-13. So that sets up 2 matchups that we'll have on Queen Bee Radio on Friday night. We will have Lancaster at Kenosha St. Joseph, the 3-seeded Arrows going to Kenosha. We'll have that on 97.7 Country WGLR. Shark, you got to see Lancaster's win against Cambridge, a very narrow 16-8 win, and kind of surprising low-scoring game just because of how efficient the Lancaster offense has been over the last few games heading into that matchup. What stood out to you in the Lancaster win on Friday night?
Well, granted, low-scoring game, but it wasn't a boring game, to say the least. The teams moved the football. You saw some really good individual performances from the Lancaster Flying Arrows, especially with Nolan Wolf at quarterback, Peyton Alvarado, and even Colby Lull, his role really has been a backup fullback, but he got a touchdown in the game. And then after he had the touchdown, there was an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. So the penalty was applied to the extra point attempt. I thought the Arrows would kick it, but they went for 2. and a swing pass to Peyton Alvarado down the near sideline, and he lifted off at about the 5-yard line, and he took the football and pinned it up against the pylon and got the 2-point extra point. That was a very exciting play. And as far as what Cambridge did, they moved the football efficiently, but I kind of thought that they got too much in love with the long pass, and they weren't looking for a whole lot of stuff underneath, some short passing routes. I'm looking at you too, Jordan Love. But yeah, the thing is that look for something that the defense will give you. The Arrows were giving some space on defense, but Cambridge just didn't take advantage of it. And all the scoring took place in the first half. No scoring in the second half of the game, and the Arrows came out victorious. And so it's a level 1 victory for the Flying Arrows, and on to level 2, where they have to go on the road now the rest of the postseason, as they're only a number 7 seed. Can't really explain that. Here's a team with just 1 loss during the year in SWC conference action against Platteville, and not only was the loss by 1 point, it was by 3 inches, and they end up with a number 7 seed. Can't figure out the explanation for that.
If I can jump in, Shark better gargle a lot before the game on Friday night when he goes to Kenosha St. Joe's, because what a matchup of running backs that's going to be. You got Peyton Alvarado, who's over 1,600 yards and 21 touchdowns. He's had a phenomenal year, against Jaden Gordon, over 1,900 yards, almost 2,000 yards, 36 touchdowns. And I think he had runs, I was looking at my notes, runs of 35, 41, 70 for touchdowns against Cuba City, plus I think a 3-yard run and a 1-yard run. He had 5 touchdown runs. The Lancaster defense, which has been very good all year, with one exception, Mr. Truther, is going to have to really, really play well Friday night. It could be a track meet.
And Tom, not only that about Gordon, he played last year against Lancaster, a 35-6 win for St. Joe's over Lancaster. And not only did he play a great game offensively, he played a great game defensively. He had a pick 6 for a touchdown right before halftime that kind of sealed it last year against the Arrows.
Yeah, phenomenal athlete, and their quarterback is a dual threat guy too. It's Lancaster's got their hands full. It's too bad that their seeding wasn't a little bit better based on the year that they had, as Shark pointed out.
Again, that's the question about how in the heck do they really seed? How does this computer sort this out and everything? Makes you wonder.
Yep, and Shark, you kind of alluded to this. How, from what you've gathered so far, how comparable is this Kenosha St. Joseph's team to the one that Lancaster did see last year? And do you think that there are things that Lancaster can pick up on from last year's level 2 loss against Kenosha that they can bring to the table to make it a more competitive game and hopefully for Lancaster come away with the win?
Well, it'll just simply sound cliche-ish. You got to stay away from turnovers, and that hurt them last year. They can't give up many big plays. If anything, make Kenosha St. Joe's work hard to get the scores that they will try to do. Eat up the clock, and try to just keep the score close if you can. If you keep the score close, you might have a shot at the end. If it gets to be a runaway train late in the first half, like last year, well then, yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle the rest of the way. So yeah, for the Arrows, win the time of possession, keep things close, don't give up any big plays, and come up with a few big plays of your own.
One of the things that, looking at it from a coaching viewpoint, you as a coach and the players have seen this team before. You remember a little bit about them from the previous year, which helps you kind of to plan lay out your game plan as far as what it is you want to do and what do you think you can do this year that you couldn't do last year. And it does give you a little heads up there. Granted that they've got the same advantage, but still, when you were on the wrong side of the score last time, it's got to help you to try to rectify that.
I would think also that Lancaster, similar to what we were talking about with Prairie du Chien against Columbus, they want to use their offense to play defense. And obviously Lancaster's really good at the really long, physical kind of drive. They have to make sure that they are able to score when they have the football, because obviously Kenosha St. Joseph's can do that. So Platteville, I think, Lancaster needs to make sure that they're able to finish drives, not just keep the ball to themselves to prevent Kenosha St. Joseph from using its offense, but make sure you come up with points at the end, which they kind of didn't do apparently against in their level 1 game last week.
Yep, and that will be Lancaster going to Kenosha St. Joseph. We'll have that game on 97.7 Country WGLR at 7 o'clock on Friday night. The winner of that game takes on the winner of the game that we'll have on Super Hits 106. This is going to be a fun one, too, with the number 1 seed Darlington in a rematch against the number 5 seeded Mineral Point. Again, the Pointers coming off a 30-13 win over Racine Lutheran. Pointers go on the road, come away with a big win. Darlington taking care of business against Belleville. Darlington, the 1 seed, Belleville, the 8 seed. Darlington winning 49-14. And, in their regular season matchup, Darlington beat Mineral Point 20-13. It was a touchdown with 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter that decided the game. So very evenly matched, at least as far as the way that the game played out. But as Wally, Shark, you two probably know this about as much as anyone. Darlington, Mineral Point, all bets are off. These are 2 programs, 2 teams that know each other very well. Obviously, Darlington has more of the football reputation on their side as far as the dominant programs in Southwest Wisconsin. But Mineral Point always plays them tough, and when it's a playoff game and that both teams are going to bring it, it's going to be an outstanding matchup. What's something that you'll be looking for in this one, Wally?
This is when you talk about this being a barn burner and everything, and I think of the stories that some people from Darlington told me over the years about how that used to be an annual Armistice Day game that was played down at, I guess that was down at the fair where the fairgrounds is now. I believe it's where they played back then.
Yep.
This is that level of game. It's where these guys are going to come after each other with everything they have. I think Mineral Point's got a whale of a shot of knocking Darlington off. However, I do believe that Darlington is the better football team, and they should prevail. But shouldas and couldas, we know how that works out.
Yep, agreed. And Shark, Darlington, Mineral Point, the 3rd longest rivalry in the state of Wisconsin. This would be the 123rd meeting. Darlington leads the all-time series 91-26-5. So yeah, it's been very lopsided, but again, this is these 2 programs know each other so well. So many players from basketball to wrestling, track and field, baseball, like they all know each other so well. Geography, obviously, a big factor in this as well. This feels like it could be a rock fight, could be a track meet, could be, any number of different things. It's just, I just have a feeling it's going to be a very close game. It's just, what does the tone of the game seem like it's going to be?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to gauge what that's going to be like, just because you just have different players in different years. A few years ago, well, in fact, it was last year. Darlington had they had like 4 running backs that combined for well over 1,000 yards rushing. Those guys come in fresh and ready to go each and every time. And Mineral Point at quarterback, you had Spurley last year, but he was coming off some injuries, and he has played well this year. And he's just kind of more like the game manager, somebody who's just not going to make a whole lot of mistakes, but can he come up with the big play? And that's probably going to be a big question for whether Mineral Point is able to pull off what would be on paper an upset.
Agreed. Should be a fun one. We'll have that game again on Friday night. It's Darlington hosting Mineral Point on Super Hits 106. Let's move on to Division 7, where we saw the number 1 seed Potosi-Cassville take down Hillsboro in a shutout, 40-0. Tom and I, we had the call of River Ridge against Highland. River Ridge coming away with a 38-19 win. In the bottom half of that bracket, Blackhawk Warren shutting out Seneca Wazeeka-Steuben 26-0. And then Ithaca trying to make us eat our words about the Ridge and Valley Conference. Had Johnson Creek down, but Johnson Creek a last-minute touchdown to come away with a 36-30 win. So that sets up the rematch between Potosi-Cassville and River Ridge. We'll have that game on ESPN Radio, AM 1590, WPVL, and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. The bottom half of that bracket, Blackhawk Warren going to Johnson Creek. And Tom, looking back at the River Ridge Highland game from level 1, it certainly seemed like River Ridge was the better team completely from start to finish. Highland did have a few big plays that kind of kept them in the game in the second and mid third quarters before River Ridge really pulled away. But I think the headliner coming out of that game was the injury to Andrew Nice, having that leg injury with about 3 minutes to go in the game. Coach Wade Winkers was talking to us post game about, all River Ridge was trying to do was get that last first down before they were, getting their subs in to close out the game. Just kind of an unfortunate thing. He had to be carted off, but it sounds like that Andrew Nice is in good spirits. It wasn't as serious as originally thought. But for River Ridge, I think they've wanted this rematch with Potosi-Cassville, considering how the regular season game ended. River Ridge had that 26-14 lead before Braden Fishnick had that miraculous comeback to bring Potosi-Cassville in it. But what were your takeaways from River Ridge's performance against Highland, and what are some of the things that you think Coach Winkers might be talking with his team as they get ready to take on Potosi-Cassville for a second time in just a few weeks?
Well, I first of all want to look at what Potosi-Cassville did to Hillsboro. They rushed 43 times for over 400 yards, and Roman Friedrich and Eli Adams both came back and rushed for over 100 yards. And they did not play against River Ridge that first time.
Right.
They're obviously going to make a pretty big impact on the game Friday night. Brandon Davis, I thought, was really good for River Ridge. He had 283 total yards combined passing and rushing. Andrew Nice is kind of the heartbeat of that offense, running that fullback position. 92 yards rushing. He returned a fumble. 65 yards. I think he'll play this week. He may be limited. I talked to him on Sunday. Spirits were good. He was hoping to play, but his ankle was wrapped. I don't know if you guys have ever sprained an ankle. I have, and I swore my leg was going to fall off. The first time I sprained an ankle, it is painful. And sometimes they respond quickly, sometimes they respond slowly, but that's an important injury for River Ridge, I believe, because he takes a lot of the attention away from Brandon Davis. He allows Brandon Davis to operate. If Andrew Nice is not a threat to run Friday night, that will make it very, very difficult for the River Ridge rushing offense. Also, defensively, Ridge held Highland to 35 yards. So they're a good defensive team. Potosi's going to want to run. We'll see what happens there. I would push back a little bit, Tyler, on you that Ridge had this completely under control, lest I remind you, it was a 19-13 lead for River Ridge coming out of the halftime. They completed a pass inside the 10, which would have been a first down.
Yeah, you're right.
Goal, yep. And that play was called back due to illegal procedure. And then I believe they turned the ball over the very next play. And then Davis ran two large, long plays back to back. And basically that was the game. But, if Highland goes in there, you never know.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'll say, it's supposed to be wet Friday. I don't think it's supposed to be rainy, but we're supposed to get rain leading up to Friday. It's supposed to be windy. The field conditions should be really good for two teams that love to run the football. So we'll have to see what happens.
One of the things when you talk about an ankle sprain, and how long it can take to come back from the sprain like that or whatever, it depends on where the sprain is within the ankle. I mean, if it's a high ankle sprain, oh, he's in real trouble. But the lower it is, the better chance there is that he could be recovered, and by proper supporting it, have an opportunity to play. But you get up higher on that ankle, and yeah, that's almost like forget it.
Have been something that I'll pose to you, Wally, because this is an interesting comment that I heard from Coach Winkers during our post game interview, and I asked him about the rematch with Potosi-Cassville, in that the games against Potosi-Cassville for River Ridge have been competitive, but Potosi-Cassville has found a way to win, I believe, 4 or 5 in a row now at this point. In those games, the majority of the time, River Ridge has had a 2-score lead in those games. From a coaching standpoint, what's the message to your team if you are River Ridge, knowing that you have the ability to beat this team? You've been in competition with them in some big games, both regular season to decide the conference as well as playoff games. But Potosi-Cassville has found a way to dig those games out, and they have been some very painful losses for River Ridge over the last couple of years against Potosi-Cassville. When you're in that situation as a coach, how do you prepare your team mentally for a game like that?
Well, I'll even go back to say, how do you prepare yourself mentally for that? Because you're behind the 8 ball as well. It's difficult, because at the same token, you have to have a very forgetful memory. You need to forget about a lot of those kinds of things, and you need to push on and put it in the back of your mind. You don't want anyone to remember losses. You want to remember winning. And if those haven't been wins, then it's better to get them out of your mind. And then you, as a coach, you make certain that you have them prepared for what you know you can expect to see, and to deal with it in that way. You don't want to dwell on negatives. You just don't. You dwell on positives. And I think that's the hardest thing when you're dealing with high school kids, because high school kids do remember, and they're not like a relief pitcher who comes in with a 2-run lead, and the first pitch he gives up a home run. All of a sudden you have to forget about that and go back out and just do your thing. That's kind of where the kids need to be. Getting them there, that's tough. But I do think you have to take it from the positive viewpoint, and where you know what they like to do when the going gets tough, that's what you have to try to be prepared to stop.
Yeah, should be a very fun one. We'll have Potosi-Cassville against River Ridge. Again, Friday night on ESPN Radio, AM 1590 WPVL, and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Let's just touch on Blackhawk Warren traveling to Johnson Creek. Again, Blackhawk coming away with the 26-0 win over Seneca Wazeeka-Steuben, heading to Johnson Creek, again, who just escaped a Ridge and Valley conference team. Blackhawk Warren's only loss was to Potosi-Cassville in conference play. I think it's kind of a similar thing to what we said about Mineral Point in their level 1 playoff, where a team that plays the brand and the style that Blackhawk Warren does, if it's just about controlling the line of scrimmage and just pushing people around, I think that certainly is an advantage for Blackhawk Warren, and could set up for yet another Six Rivers matchup in level 3. I don't want to get too far ahead and say that Blackhawk Warren has this game won, but I certainly think that Blackhawk Warren has a chance to win this one. Steve, you got to see Blackhawk Warren against Potosi-Cassville earlier this year. It seems like the style of play hasn't changed for Blackhawk Warren. They seem to have been running the same system that they've been running the last couple of years. Think that that's still the recipe for success in this level 2 playoff?
Well, it probably is. The thing to keep in mind about that game when Blackhawk Warren played Potosi-Cassville back for homecoming. Potosi Cassville really stuffed Blackhawk Warren in the first half of that game. They weren't able, I don't know what the first down count was, but it was extremely low. And so Potosi Cassville had a pretty sizable lead at the half, which was somewhat of I think Mark and I were both surprised about that. But they really won the line of scrimmage. Potosi Cassville did. If Johnson Creek's going to win this game, they have to win the line of scrimmage also. This is the style of team, and I think we saw this to some extent also in the Potosi Cassville game. If Blackhawk Warren gets up on you, you have a major problem coming back because they can just grind it out. If you get Blackhawk Warren down and they start having to do things that they're not used to, basically throwing the football, not that they can't throw the football, but if you take away some of the things that they want to do, then you have an opportunity to beat Blackhawk Warren. I guess that's really what Johnson Creek's going to have to try to do Friday.
It's going to be an interesting game. I don't think the computer gives the Six Rivers Conference in football enough credit. I think it's a very, very good Division 7 football conference. I've got questions about Johnson Creek. They're 9-1. But are they a real good team in a conference that is not as good as the Six Rivers? I guess we're going to find that out. Both teams have rushed for over 3,000 yards on offense, which astounds me this year, both teams. Johnson Creek does average 46 points a game. Steve made the point, if they don't get the football, they're not going to get the 46 points. And the question is, can Johnson Creek win a low-scoring game? And they were very, very lucky to win last week. Ithaca had them, but let them off the hook. As the former Arizona Cardinal coach said, we had them right where they were who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook. But, sometimes, though, those teams can be dangerous, in all sports. A higher seed, supposed to win easily, and they find themselves in a game, and it's a dogfight. And they pull it out, and sometimes it gives them the wake-up call that they need, for that next game. So, I think Blackhawk Warren needs to be ready for Johnson Creek to play a really good game too. Should be interesting.
I think Johnson Creek has to be ready for Blackhawk Warren to take it to them. I really do. I'm looking forward. I wish I could be down for that game. Blackhawk Warren is pretty doggone tough, and you look at how their games have gone this year, and the fact that they've gone through a gauntlet in going through the Six Rivers. Johnson Creek has not been tested like that.
Very curious to see how that game turns out, and I'm kind of curious to see, does Blackhawk Warren have that chip on their shoulder? Being a 3 seed, are they truly better than the 3 seed that they were awarded? Because again, their loss was to a very good Potosi Cassville team, which is the number 1 seed in this bracket. Potosi Cassville, the conference champion. Very, very curious to see how that game shakes out. Again, the winner of that game takes on the winner that we have on ESPN Radio AM 1590 WPVL between Potosi Cassville and River Ridge. And that will wrap things up for our Level 1 recap and Level 2 preview. Some very fun matchups that we have on Queen Bee Radio coming up this week. Again, on 97.7 Country WGLR in Division 6, it will be Lancaster going to Kenosha St. Joseph, and then Darlington hosting Mineral Point on Super Hits 106. In Division 4, we have Platteville hosting, just lost it, now found it, Lakeside Lutheran on Extreme 107.1. And then in Division 7, we will have River Ridge at Potosi Cassville. So that will wrap up our football playoff preview and recap for Level 1 and Level 2. And coming up after this, Steve Pressegard and I will go over the Division 4 volleyball sectional, as well as talk a little bit about the Galena Pirates volleyball team that we'll be following on Queen Bee Radio this week as well. The Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup continues after this on YouTube and SoundCloud.
Check out Subs.com. Subs is Southwest Wisconsin's go-to supplement store. Find all your favorite supplement brands at the best prices from local people. Fuel your fitness journey. Subs.com, your go-to supplement store with locations in Fenimore and Dubuque.
This week's highlight reel is presented by Subs.com. Action will resume. Set point. Brahman Halverson serves for Highland. Her serve played in the back row by Reese Rundy. Morgan Freeman gets the setup. She'll bump it over for the third hit. Now here's the setup for the Highland side. Anna Hennessy able to drop it over the net. It goes down, and Highland takes the opening set. 25-23. Highland had to come back to steal set number one from the Braves. Highland leads 1-0. We go to set number two. It'll be 6 serving 23 as number 2, Casey Rickers, going to serve. I'm sure the Braves are just looking to find some sort of momentum to close out this second set and have some better options going into set number 3. As Belmont sends it over on the third hit here. Here's the setup for the Cardinals as Hennessy able to tap this one over, and Lainey Rickers found out of position. Highland gets the point, and it's set point for the Cardinals, 24 serving 6. With number 10, Belmont turning the momentum in their favor in this third set, 7 serving 2, trailing 2-0, and another standing serve for Christensen. Played in the back row by Mitchick. Sophie Terrell goes on the attack. This one dug up and sent over by Rundy, and stays in play as Mitchick plays it in the back row. 50-50 ball at the net, tapped over to the Highland side. Now Belmont going to play it on their side of the floor. Here's the sent over and the kill for number 5, Haley Hodgson. Southwest Health is creating healthier communities through their hospitals and clinics in Platteville, Cuba City, and Keeler. Find out more at southwesthealth.org. Reese Rundy punches it over on the third hit for Belmont after the Highland serve. Now Lily Mitchick sends it over on a bump for the third hit for Highland. Here's the setup for Morgan Freeman. And Freeman hits it right into the chest of Lily Mitchick. Mitchick can't control it, and it's set point for Belmont. But Highland gets the point. It's 4 serving 0. As Brahman Halverson serves again. Serve played in the back row by Belmont, pushed over on the second hit. Now here's a setup for Hennessy. Hennessy gets it down for the kill. And it is still match point. 18 serving 24. Courtney Fritz has to go on a run. Running jump serve. Goes over the end line. And the Highland Cardinals win 3-1 over the Belmont Braves. And will play on Saturday night for the regional final.
They will rotate in. Jessa Brott to serve. She's authored an ace already in this one. Brott running jump serve. The lefty lets it fly. Forwarded up by Olsen. Back set, front right. Cross court spike. Return on the dig of Brott. And now a reverse bump by Olsen. Reverse bump by Rundy for the return. They'll set it up. Front middle. The attack up. Blocked back over at the net on the roof. A reverse bump return. 50-50 at the net. Golden Eagles can't get it over. Point Cuba City. 25-19. Is the final in set 2. 20 switch sides to the net. Cubans up 2-0, 25-9, 25-19. And the serve to start set number 3 by Ella McKinley. Dug forward by the Golden Eagles. Set front left. Backpedaling spike to the back middle. Hopped up to the front right. Back set and cross court spike for the kill. And Rachel Krause delivers the hammer to start. And Alexis Rundy fires it across. Dug out in the middle. Forward set, front left, push back, across the net, Cubans forward up, back set, front right, attack and cross, kill, and Cuba City gets it on the attack kill of Rachel Krause. 25-9, 25-19, 25-15. Cuba City beats conference foe Fenimore. They sweep them for the 3rd time this season. And they advance on to the regional final here at Cuba City High School.
Jay Nelson, he should be back this week. And here's Wolf on a dive play to the left, and he gets into the end zone. Touchdown! Lancaster flying arrows. That Benson splits out to the right. Don't need a whole lot of speed to score from 5 yards out. Wolf under center, takes the snap, sprints out to his right. Now he throws in the back of the end zone and wide open! Touchdown! Lancaster! Point. The line of scrimmage, the 17. And they're going to run an offensive play with 16.4 seconds to play. Here's a fake toss, right side, toss back to the left. Alvarado makes the catch. He gets to the 5-yard line, dives to the pylon, and he scores! That was all Peyton Alvarado's shot.
Yes, it was. He kept his feet going, 2 defenders on top of him trying to tackle him. He pushed his way into the end zone.
And the Wolves line up to go for the 2-point conversion, 2 receivers to each side. Davis drops back, rainbow pass, fade to the corner, and a flag is thrown. The catch is good. So the 2-point conversion is good. Trying to see which receiver it was. It was Matthew Nice on the 2-point conversion. So, Coach Scanlon was talking about being balanced offensively as 2 receivers to the right, 2 backs in the backfield. As Bennett Smith rolls to his right, fires a pass downfield. It's caught on the far sideline. Gets across the 40 to the 25, and he takes off. Somehow escapes across the 20, and he is into the end zone for Northland Buildings touchdown. 42, 2nd and 15 at their own 40-yard line. Ball spotted in the middle of the field. 3 receivers to the right. As Davis rolls right, looking downfield. Going to fire a pass downfield, looking for Nice, and a jump ball is caught at the 20-yard line. Caught it and then got thrown out of bounds inside the 20 to the 18-yard line. A first down for River Ridge, a Platteville First Supply first down, and a stop at the Bitech Green Zone at Greener Way. Bitech Resource Management of Monroe. What a play by Nice. 2nd and 8. There's Bennett Smith looking for a receiver, and this is picked off by Brady Bungie. Gets across the 30 before being tackled down at the 22-yard line. Boy, that was a bad read by Bennett Smith, and Brady Bungie there thought Bungie was going to drop the ball for a second, but able to collect himself, get the interception, and return it back in great field possession for River Ridge. 1 receiver to each side of the formation. As Davis does give inside to Nice, and what an open hole and an open lane to get into the end zone for Northland Buildings touchdown.
Eddie Leifker, the sophomore, back to serve. Running jump serve coming up, floats over the net, forwarded up from the back middle. Now they'll set it up front left through the group, blocked group back over the net as they turned away Rundy. Now they'll forward it up from Hilliard, forward set far side for the Cardinals. A dig by Ella Glassberg, and now push to the back corner by Miskey, who paints the corner for the kill. Maya Miskey and set 1. It's 25-15 the final. Cuba City goes up 1-0 over Broadhead. Ella McKinley from backcourt right. She'll punch it across, ball forwarded up by Hilliard. A forward set, front left, Schuff across, forwarded from the back middle. Forward set, front left, and Rainey Rundy off the top of the net. They'll set it up front left again for Schuff, and that is off the net, and the Cubans take set 2, 25-16. 20, no margin of error for them now, 13 serving 24. Serve coming from the backcourt left. And there's a service error that ends it. 25-15 and 25-16, 25-13. The Cuba City Cubans are regional champs, and everybody's okay on there at center court. Cuba City a winner.
Peterson standing serve right in the middle. Plessel pushes it forward. And the attack on the far side, dug up in the back row, 50-50 ball at the net. And can the Vikings get it over? They do on the 3rd hit. Barneveld with it on their side of the floor. Punched over on the 3rd hit. Now the Vikings with it. Here's the attack, far side. Great block at the net by Aaron Lassie. Now here's the setup again. Ball ricocheted. Kept alive in the middle, and a tap over. Going to be played by Pecatonica. 50-50 ball on the Barneveld side. They send it over on the 3rd hit. Now here's the setup in the middle for Pecatonica, that one gets down! No, it's still alive! Everyone thought this rally was over, but it's somehow still alive. Here's the attack in the middle, and the cross-court kill too strong. Pecatonica saying it touched the fingertips of a Barneveld player, but the officials say it's Barneveld's point. And it is set point for the Golden Eagles, 24 serving 15. Running jump serve, played in the back row by Peck. Here's the attack, far side. Dug up in the back row by Plessel, now set up on the near side attack, dug up in the back by Peck. Vikings go on the attack, that one hit sky high into the rafters. Now the third hit is just a send over. And now here's a setup on the near side. The attack dug up by Plessel, pushed forward to the front row. Attack with the right hand. Now sent over on the third hit by Alyssa Cassidy. Here's the setup for Barneveld. In the middle, gets in for the kill for number 9, Aaron Lassie. And Barneveld takes set number 1, 25-15. Number 16, Bree Peterson will check in and she will serve. Sending number 13, Diana Hendrickson, to the bench. Bree Peterson serving 24-17, set point, set number 2. Left-handed serve bumped up in the back row by Schmitz. Now the attack by Hansen. It's going to rainbow over the end line. And Pecatonica takes set number 2, 25-17. We are tied at 1 set apiece between these two Six Rivers East rivals. Second service error for Tisch, and it's set point for Barneveld. Kaylee Oyman sends it over. Vikings play it on the front row, tapped over, kept alive by Barneveld. And Plessel sends it over on a bump for the third hit. Cassidy pops it up, kept alive by Pecatonica on a backwards bump, goes out of bounds. And Barneveld takes set 3, 25-17. Now Anna Tisch has to go on a run. 13 serving 24. Here's a setup on the far side. Great block, kill at the net. And the Barneveld Golden Eagles win 3-1 and are regional champions for a second consecutive year.
Southwestern with the serve. It is still set point. Splinter serving. And here's a bump over by Highland. Center tip at the net, taken over by Highland now. Left side spike by Halverson. Down it goes, and that's it. Southwestern will call time. No, they will not call timeout. Thought they were going to, but not. Still set point. Left side tip over, tip right back. Southwestern back with it. Left side spike off the front. Halverson to set. Tipped over at the net by Terrell, sends it down, and then Southwestern sends it right back. Diving bump set over by Hepsi, but into the net. And that's it for set number 2. Will serve for a lead in the match for Southwestern. Bump set over by Halverson. Southwestern down, set by Raymaker. Spike, down it goes. Getting the kill is Kerwin. And Southwestern wins set number 3, 25-15. And Southwestern will serve for the regional. And the Southwestern fans in front of us on their feet. There's the spike. Mishik, set by Halverson. Left side send over. Southwestern with it. Spike. Left side spike. That's the ball. Southwestern win! Southwestern beats Highland in set 4, 25-22, and wins 3-1.
looking for a checking account with no monthly requirements or service charge? People's State Bank's People's Checking Account is just what you're looking for. This account includes free debit card, online and mobile banking, bill pay, and much more at no cost to you. You heard that right. No cost to you. We're your local community bank ready to serve you. People's State Bank, member FDIC.
Back on the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup, presented by Vertical Rays Milwaukee. Steve Prestegard, our Platteville Truther, with me to talk some Division IV volleyball on the state of Wisconsin, as well as some Galena Pirates volleyball that we'll have on our Queen Bee Radio family of stations this week. But let's start off with the outcome of the regional round in the Division IV side of the bracket, where we saw the Southwestern Wildcats, the 3 seed, take down Highland in the regional final on Saturday night in a 3-1 win. Southwestern got to the sectional round with that win over Highland, as well as taking down Albany and taking down Cassville in the regional round. They will take on Barneveld on Thursday night on 97.7 Country WGLR and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Steve, you were there for the Southwestern versus Highland matchup, a very fun environment in that gym at Highland on Saturday night, as it always tends to be anytime that we are at Highland. But the Southwestern Wildcats, the 3rd team out of the SWAL to get a regional championship. And, I don't know if that's necessarily so much a surprise that Southwestern got to the sectional round, but yeah, this Southwestern team seems to have a lot of momentum heading into the sectional round now.
Right. The reason is the thing about Southwestern volleyball this year is, like, Southwestern boys basketball has been for several years. Not only does Southwestern play in a bigger conference, most of the schools in the SWAL are Division III schools, and Southwestern is a D4 school, but you have 2 very good and another pretty good program. I mean, obviously Cuba City and Mineral Point, their success speaks for itself. And Darlington's pretty good also. So they had, the pattern for Southwestern boys basketball previously, and this year for Southwestern and volleyball, is you take your lumps in the regular season, but then you get into the postseason, and now you're playing schools of your size. And Southwestern is not going to be intimidated going into Highland because they've already had to play at Mineral Point and at Cuba City. And so they go in, they go in with a lot of confidence, and they really played like that. Basically, they got, I think, leads in all 4 of the sets early. That didn't last, obviously, in the first set, but they got leads in all 4 of the sets. You like to do that if you're the road underdog, and they played better than Highland did. There was no question about that.
Yep. So Southwestern will take on the number 1 seed Barneveld, who defeated Pecatonica on Saturday night in the regional final. I had the chance to call that one. And for Barneveld, they are the number 9th ranked team in Division IV. And what really stood out to me for Barneveld is how efficient they seem to be, especially in sets 1, 3, and 4. Now, the second set is a set that they lost. Talking with Martina Ryder in post game, she had mentioned that it kind of seemed like the team just kind of let their guard down in that second set. Pecatonica coming off a very emotional win, upsetting Shalsburg, defeating them in 5 sets. And the 5th set, the final was 18-16. So you can just imagine how intense, that was. And then, of course, that was Pecatonica's 2nd straight 5-set match, because they had to hold off Potosi in a 5-set match in the regional quarterfinals. So I'm sure it was a combination of Pecatonica probably just being worn out, playing a tougher opponent. Pecatonica did give Barneveld their only conference loss in the Six Rivers East earlier in the season, but Barneveld able to kind of hold serve. I'm looking forward to seeing how this shapes up, because I think Barneveld, talking with Coach Ryder, their team expects to be here. And they remember they lost to Highland in the sectional semifinal last year. part of me is wondering if they wanted that rematch with Highland, but obviously that's not going to happen at this point. But boy, Southwestern. I mean, just hearing some of the comments, seeing the posts on Facebook. We posted a video earlier this week of the regional championships that were won. And that got quite a bit of traction within the Southwestern community. The community seems to be very much behind it. I think you were very much entrenched in the fan side for Southwestern during that. I mean, talk about that reaction, because I mean, it certainly came through on the broadcast. There's a lot of excitement for the Southwestern team as they get ready for a big matchup against Barneveld on Thursday night.
Southwestern's fans were very loud all night. And they kind of got louder as the game went on. And, it wasn't that Highland was quiet or anything like that, but you could kind of tell that they were getting a little nervous at how things were going as they, lost the third set and they're down 2-1 and looking at the end of their season possibly. But yeah, there's a lot of enthusiasm for Southwestern. And, the fans are kind of used to this sort of thing because, as we said before, Southwestern's boys basketball team has been the same sort of team that kind of comes in with a little better than 500 record, but not a great record. Didn't finish a great spot in the conference and all that. But the postseason is, where Southwestern has really put it together in boys basketball. And it seems like the volleyball team is kind of this season. And so they're not going to go into Barneveld the least bit intimidated. I think that first set is going to be really interesting to watch because, again, one of the things about road underdogs is they want to get a lead on the other team. Southwestern did not do that Saturday night, but I think that first set is going to be a really interesting harbinger of how the match is going to go.
Yeah, the environment at Barneveld was really fun. I was on the side where the Pecatonica fans were, and definitely in between sets 2 and 3 after it was tied 1-1. There was a lot of back and forth between the two sides chanting, and I would anticipate that I'll be on the Southwestern side from a broadcast standpoint. So I will follow suit with what you did. Have to adjust my microphones accordingly to make sure that everything comes through crystal clear. Looking forward to seeing that one. Again, that will be Southwestern at Barneveld Thursday night, sectional semifinal in Division 4. That'll be on 97.7 Country WGLR and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Let's talk about Galena Pirates volleyball, Steve. You got to see them quite a bit last year, and this is a Galena Pirates team that seems to be on another successful season. I believe you said 29-4 is their record heading into their playoff matches this week. Talk about these Galena Pirates. Seems to be eerily similar to kind of how this team shaped out last year. That did make a very, very deep run.
They were 38-2 last year, got to the sectional final before they ran into Freeport Aquin. So, although the Wisconsin teams that lost playoff games to parochial schools can feel Galena's pain from that. But, they've rebounded from that to be 29-4, and they've got a couple of players whose names will be familiar from the basketball teams that have gotten to state in back-to-back years, namely Gracie Furlong and Addie Hafel as two of their hitters. This is a team that just absolutely dominated the NUI West to this stat. Not only were they 12-0, but they did not give up a set in the conference season. So they blew through the NUI West. Now, sometimes you can look at that and say, well, okay, but how good are they, when they have to play teams that are more comparable? And two of their losses are to ranked teams, Fulton and now I should have checked what the team was named, but there's another school that Galena got beat by relatively recently in a tournament, but again, they come up at 29-4, and it was Cissna Park that they got. That was actually their last loss of the season, and that was back in a tournament that was in Champaign, believe it or not. So, this is the team. If there's a question mark about this team, it is, well, okay, you blew through the NUI West. There's some teams that are not very good, and there's some okay teams. How are you going to do against stiffer competition? And this is a bracket that is a difficult bracket for anybody. And I'll just check here real quick. But if you look at the Illinois Class 1A rankings, you would find that Lena Winslow is number one. Galena's third. Durand, who is a possible opponent in the regional final on Thursday, they're fourth. Newark is seventh. Fulton is ninth. And Freeport-Aquin is 10th. All of those are teams from the Northwest Upstate Illini Conference. They're in different divisions, but all of them are potential postseason opponents for the Pirates. So it's not going to be easy. But then again, it's not going to be easy for any of those teams because they have to play Galena. So the other thing to keep in mind about Illinois volleyball is, and I don't know why this is, but it's only best of 3. It's not best of 5.
Right.
And you can imagine that if you are playing, you lose the first set, suddenly you're looking at the end of your season very abruptly, frankly. And, Galena will certainly be favored in their first match against Eastland. But that Galena-Durand match, if that takes place Thursday, the reaction of whoever it is that loses that first set is going to be fascinating because they are literally, it's not like, okay, we didn't play well in the first set, we can come back. It's, we didn't play well in the first set, and if we keep doing this, we're done. So talk about something that's going to focus the mind of, any volleyball team in that kind of situation.
Yeah, I know firsthand, Galena's dominance on the volleyball side. I did get to call one of their matches a couple seasons ago, and I remember, I believe my pregame and postgame were longer than the match itself.
Yeah,
they were. Yeah. I think it was like 25-7 and 25-9 were the finals in that, best of 3. So Galena has had a reputation as a very strong volleyball program, and we will have coverage of them should they advance by the time that this airs on Extreme 1071 and X1071.com. Again, they played on Wednesday night. They will play either Durand, Pearl City, Pecatonica, or Dakota at Durand on Extreme 1071 on Thursday night. Again, should they advance there. So yeah, very fun time postseason volleyball. We got sectional volleyball going on the Wisconsin side. This is the regional round in the IHSA side of things, and yeah, hopefully all of our local teams continue on this postseason run. Thank you, Steve. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
As I continue to discover towns in Illinois I've never been to, Durand is one, and there will be possibly others, depending on how the Pirates do.
Yep, you will have Illinois officially scouted out with the runs that these Galena and Scales Mountain teams tend to be making in postseason. So again, thank you, Steve, for taking some time to chat with us about the Division 4 sectional round on the WIAA side, as well as the Galena Pirates volleyball team as they compete in IHSA regional volleyball action. That will wrap things up for the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup. Thank you so much for watching, and we will have another episode coming up next Thursday. We will recap the Level 2 playoffs. We'll see how many teams we send to state for WIAA volleyball, and of course, catch all the play-by-play action that we can provide. We'll try and get as many video streams as we can on the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. If you haven't already, click subscribe so you get those notifications of the postseason action that we are able to bring to you. Again, for Steve Prestigard, I'm Tyler Dictanis. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup on YouTube and SoundCloud.